When detectives opened the freezer at Chicago's most famous restaurant, they found packages of meat wrapped in butcher paper, each one carefully labeled with initials. Marissa Granger, the chef's wife, missing for 7 days. But here's what made investigators sick. The night before her disappearance, her husband had served his signature sausages to a packed dining room. Standing ovations, 5-star reviews, customers calling it the best meal of their lives. They had no idea what they were really tasting. Elliot Granger didn't just kill his wife when she threatened to expose him. He made her part of his menu. And Chicago had been eating his secrets for years. This is the story of the chef who believed murder was art, and the wife who left behind one thing he didn't expect, evidence he couldn't destroy. If you believe every victim deserves to be more than a headline, hit subscribe right now. Join the witness wall, where we don't just tell you how they died. We tell you why their lives mattered. Subscribe, because what comes next will change how you see everything. A white apron hung perfectly pressed against Elliot Granger's chest as studio lights warmed his face. Cameras rolled. The host grinned wide, holding up one of his famous sausages like a trophy. Applause rippled through the small audience crammed into the Chicago morning show set. "Elliot, tell us, what makes your sausages so unforgettable?" He smiled that smile. The one that had sold out reservations 3 months in advance. The one that made food bloggers write essays about his unparalleled artistry. "It's all about the blend," he said, his voice smooth as butter melting over heat. "You need patience, precision, and ingredients nobody else thinks to use." The crowd laughed. They thought he was talking about spices. He wasn't. Elliot Granger had become Chicago's culinary darling in less than 5 years. His restaurant, Maison du Gout, sat tucked in Logan Square like a jewel box of forbidden luxury. Reservations required connections. His sausages required something else entirely. People called him the Anthony Bourdain of Chicago's underground food scene. A rebel with a knife and a story. But Bourdain had demons he fought against. Elliot fed his. That night, after the cameras stopped rolling and the makeup came off, Elliot drove back to his restaurant. The streets of Logan Square were quiet, bathed in the orange glow of streetlights. He parked in the alley behind Maison du Gout, where delivery trucks usually idled and rats scurried between dumpsters. Inside, the kitchen smelled of rosemary and charred meat. The staff had gone home hours ago. The silence felt thick, almost sacred. Elliot moved toward the walk-in freezer at the back of the kitchen. The heavy door opened with a hiss of cold air. Inside, hanging from steel hooks, were cuts of meat wrapped in butcher paper. Each one labeled with initials. Each one part of his collection. He ran his fingers over the packages, whispering to himself. Art requires sacrifice. Behind the freezer's hum, if you listened closely enough, you could almost hear the echoes of screams that had been swallowed by stainless steel and cold. But nobody ever listened that closely. Not yet. Marissa Granger sat at the edge of their bed in their Wicker Park townhouse, staring at the closet door. She'd been married to Elliot for 7 years. 7 years of charming dinners, spontaneous trips to wine country, and photographs that looked perfect on Instagram. But perfection, she'd learned, was just another word for hiding. She heard the front door open downstairs. His footsteps were deliberate, calm. Always calm. Marissa? His voice floated up the stairs. I'm home. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers twisted the wedding ring on her left hand. It felt heavier than it used to. When she finally came downstairs, Elliot was in the kitchen pouring himself a glass of red wine. He'd loosened his tie but still wore his chef's jacket. The faint smell of smoke clung to him. Long night? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. You know how it is. Perfecting the menu. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It never did anymore. You've been staying later and later, she said quietly. Sometimes I wonder if you even remember you have a wife. He set the glass down, his jaw tightening just slightly. I'm building something, Marissa. You used to understand that. I used to believe a lot of things. The silence stretched between them like a wound. She wanted to say more. Wanted to ask about the strange charges on their credit card, late-night purchases of industrial-grade cleaning supplies, the new locks on the freezer at the restaurant. Wanted to ask why his clothes sometimes smelled like copper and salt instead of herbs and garlic. But fear had a way of tying your tongue. Instead, she turned on the television. The news anchor's voice filled the room. Body parts belonging to a missing woman were discovered near the Chicago River early this morning. Police are calling it a homicide and are asking anyone with information to come forward. Elliot reached for the remote and turned up the volume. Not out of curiosity. Out of something else entirely. Marissa watched him. His face was unreadable, but his knuckles had gone white around the wine glass. That's awful, she whispered. Yeah, he said, his voice flat. Awful. But she noticed he didn't look away from the screen. He watched every detail. Every close-up of the crime scene tape. Every mention of the victim's name. Like he was checking his work. 15 years earlier, Elliot Granger had been nobody. Just another kid from the South Side trying to escape the smell of rust and old regret. His father had been a drunk. His mother had disappeared when he was 12. The only person who ever showed him kindness was an old butcher named Sal Moretti. Sal ran a small shop on 47th Street. The kind of place where old Italian men bought lamb shanks and exchanged gossip. Sal taught Elliot how to hold a knife. How to find the seams in meat. How to separate muscle from bone with the gentleness of a surgeon. Respect the flesh, Sal used to say, his hands stained red. Every cut tells a story. Elliot learned fast. Too fast. He became obsessed with the texture of meat. The way different bodies, different animals, responded to the blade. He spent hours in the back room, practicing cuts, studying anatomy books he'd stolen from the library. One night, Sal found him standing over a pig carcass, whispering to it. "What are you doing, kid?" Elliot looked up, eyes gleaming. "Learning." Sal laughed it off. But something in the boy's gaze unsettled him. 3 months later, Sal Moretti died in his shop. Heart attack, the coroner said. Found slumped over his butcher block, a knife still in his hand. Elliot inherited the business. He was only 19. The neighborhood whispered about it. How convenient. How strange. But there was no proof of anything. Elliot rebranded the shop. Modernized it. Turned it into a chic charcuterie spot that attracted foodies from Lincoln Park and Lakeview. His sausages became legendary. People said they tasted like nothing else. They were right. Years passed. The shop grew into a full restaurant. Maison du Gout opened to rave reviews. Elliot became a name. A brand. But late at night, when the city slept, he still went back to that walk-in freezer. Still practiced his cuts. Still whispered to the meat. Every cut tells a story. And the police? They'd questioned him once. Years ago. About missing women from the streets near his old shop. Sex workers. Addicts. People nobody looked for. But with no bodies, no evidence, they had nothing. Elliot walked free. He always did. It started with a flash drive. Marissa found it tucked inside a cookbook in Elliot's study, a small, black USB stick that didn't belong there. She hadn't been snooping. Not intentionally. She'd just been looking for a recipe she'd written years ago. But curiosity, once awake, doesn't go back to sleep. She slipped the drive into her laptop and waited as the files loaded. Video files. Dozens of them. The first one opened with a timestamp, 2:47 a.m. The camera was positioned high in the corner of the restaurant's kitchen. Night vision made everything green and ghostly. She saw Elliot enter the frame, wearing gloves and an apron. Then she saw the woman. Marissa's hand flew to her mouth. The woman was tied to a chair, gagged, eyes wide with terror. She was young. Maybe 25. Dark hair. A tattoo on her wrist. Elliot moved around her slowly, calmly, like he was preparing a meal. Because he was. Marissa couldn't breathe. She wanted to stop the video. Wanted to close the laptop and pretend she'd never seen it. But her body wouldn't move. On screen, Elliot leaned close to the woman and whispered something. Then he picked up a knife. Marissa slammed the laptop shut. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Sweat soaked through her shirt. She stood up, stumbled backward, knocked over a chair. This couldn't be real. But it was. She opened the laptop again. Clicked on another file. Then another. Different women. Different nights. Same result. And in every video, at some point, Elliot turned toward the camera. Like he knew it was recording. Like he wanted it recorded. When Elliot came home that evening, Marissa was waiting in the living room. The flash drive sat on the coffee table between them. He looked at it. Then at her. "You watched them," he said. Not a question. "Who were they?" Her voice shook. "Nobody." He sat down calmly, like they were discussing dinner plans. "People nobody missed." "Elliot. You always loved my sausages, didn't you, Marissa?" The words hit her like a fist. She stood up, stumbling backward. "You're insane." "No." He stood too, moving toward her. "I'm an artist." "And you?" "You've been eating my art for years." She ran to the bathroom and locked the door. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and called her sister. "Elena," she whispered, choking on tears. "If something happens to me, tell the police to check the freezer at Maison du Gout." "What?" "Marissa, what are you?" "Just promise me." "I promise." "But what's going on?" "I can't talk. I have to go." She hung up and stared at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked like a stranger. Marissa didn't sleep that night. She sat on the bathroom floor, phone clutched in her hand, listening to Elliot move through the house. His footsteps were slow. Methodical. He knocked once on the bathroom door. "Marissa," he said softly. "Come out. Let's talk like adults." She didn't answer. Hours passed. Eventually, she heard him leave. When the sun finally rose, she packed a bag. Just the essentials. Clothes. Passport. Cash she'd been hiding in a shoebox for months. She called her friend David, a journalist who wrote for the Chicago Tribune. They'd known each other since college. If anyone would believe her, it would be him. They met at a coffee shop in Logan Square. The place was crowded, full of students and freelancers typing on laptops. David ordered them both lattes and sat across from her, concern etched into his face. "You look terrible," he said gently. "I need your help." She slid the flash drive across the table. Everything's on here. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. If he finds out I told you I'm dead. David's expression darkened. Marissa, what are we talking about here? Murder. Multiple murders. My husband, her voice broke. He's been killing people. For years. David stared at her. Then at the flash drive. Are you sure? I watched the videos. I saw everything. He pocketed the drive. Good. I'll look at it tonight. But you need to go to the police. Not yet. He has connections. I need this story out there first. Once it's public, he can't touch me. Marissa. Please. He nodded slowly. Good. I'll write it. But you need to disappear until this goes live. Do you have somewhere safe? My sister's place. Go there. Don't tell anyone else where you are. She left the coffee shop feeling lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. But when she got home, she found a note on the kitchen counter. In Elliot's handwriting. Running never solves anything. Come home for dinner tonight. We need to talk. Her blood went cold. He knew. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. If you want your sister to stay safe, you'll come home. 7 p.m. Don't be late. She looked out the window. Across the street, parked under a tree, was Elliot's car. He'd been watching the whole time. Marissa stood in the doorway of their Wicker Park townhouse at exactly 7 p.m. Her hand shook as she turned the key. Inside, candles flickered on the dining room table. Soft jazz played from the speakers. The smell of roasted meat filled the air. Elliot appeared from the kitchen, wearing a crisp white shirt and holding a bottle of wine. You came, he said, smiling. I'm glad. She didn't move. Sit, he said, pulling out a chair. I made your favorite. She sat because her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. He poured her a glass of red wine. The liquid caught the candlelight, dark and deep. You've been stressed, he said, sitting across from her. I understand. I know I've been distant. But everything I've done, Marissa, I've done for us. For us. Her voice was barely a whisper. My restaurant. My reputation. Our life. Do you think any of that comes without sacrifice? She stared at the plate in front of her. The meat was perfectly seared, garnished with herbs and roasted vegetables. I can't eat this. Why not? He leaned forward. You've eaten my cooking for years. Why stop now? Because I know what's in it. His smile didn't waver. You've always been my favorite taste, Marissa. Did you know that? Her stomach turned. I need to use the bathroom. Of course. He gestured toward the hallway. Don't be long. Dinner gets cold. She locked the bathroom door and pulled out her phone. Her hands trembled as she texted Elena. If I don't call you in an hour, it's him. She stared at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were hollow. Her skin pale. This was it. She heard footsteps outside the door. Marissa? Elliot's voice was soft. Everything okay? I'll be right out. She splashed water on her face and opened the door. Elliot stood there, blocking the hallway. In his hand was a kitchen knife. You were going to ruin everything, he said quietly. After everything I built. Everything I gave you. Elliot, please. I loved you. I really did. The knife moved fast. Glass shattered somewhere in the distance. The world went black. Elliot Granger woke at 5 a.m. like he always did. He showered, shaved, put on his chef's whites, checked his reflection in the mirror. A small scratch ran along his jawline. He covered it with makeup. Downstairs, The dining room looked normal. The candles had burned down to nothing. The plates sat clean in the dishwasher. No trace of what had happened. He loaded a large cooler into the trunk of his car and drove to Maison du Gout as the city began to wake. The restaurant wouldn't open for hours. The kitchen was silent. In the walk-in freezer, he carefully unwrapped the butcher paper from the cooler and arranged the new packages on the shelf, each one labeled with his meticulous handwriting. He stood there for a moment, the cold air biting his skin. "You'll be remembered," he whispered. "In every dish, every review, every smile." Later that morning, he began the prep work. Grinding, seasoning, blending. His hands moved with the precision of a surgeon. By noon, the new batch was ready. The chef's secret, his signature sausage line. He posted a photo on Instagram, the sausages arranged artfully on a wooden board, garnished with fresh herbs. The caption read, "Sometimes, art requires sacrifice. New batch drops tonight. Reservations filling fast." The comments rolled in within minutes. "Can't wait to try them. You're a genius, chef. Best sausages in Chicago, hands down." Elliot smiled. They had no idea how right they were. Elena Morales hadn't heard from her sister in 3 days. Marissa's last text still haunted her. "If I don't call you in an hour, it's him." Elena had tried calling, texting. She'd even driven to the Wicker Park townhouse and knocked on the door. No answer. Elliot's car wasn't there. On the 4th day, she walked into the Chicago Police Department and filed a missing persons report. Detective Renee Carter took the case. Renee was in her mid-40s, a veteran of the Southside Homicide Unit who'd seen enough death to recognize the smell of it on people. When Elena sat across from her, hands shaking as she explained about the text message, about Elliot, about the freezer, Renee listened carefully. "Has your sister ever disappeared before?" Renee asked. "Never. She's not like that. Something's wrong. I can feel it." Renee made a note. "I'll look into it." 2 days later, Renee stood outside Maison du Gout. The restaurant glowed warmly in the evening light. Through the windows, she could see well-dressed diners laughing over wine glasses. She pushed open the door. The smell of rosemary and smoked meat wrapped around her. A hostess greeted her with a smile. "Do you have a reservation?" "I'm here to see Elliot Granger." "I'm Detective Carter." The smile faltered. "I'll get him." Elliot appeared moments later, wiping his hands on his apron. His face arranged itself into perfect concern. "Detective, how can I help you? Your wife has been reported missing." He flinched just slightly. "Missing? Marissa? When was the last time you saw her?" 5 days ago. We had dinner. Then she said she needed space. She left. I thought she was staying with her sister." "She's not." Elliot's face crumpled. "Oh God. Where is she?" Renee watched him carefully. The performance was good. Almost perfect. Almost. "Mind if I look around?" "Of course. Anything to help find her." He led her through the restaurant. The kitchen gleamed with stainless steel and order. Staff moved efficiently, barely glancing up. Then they reached the walk-in freezer. Renee noticed the heavy lock. "This new security. We've had issues with theft." She stepped inside. The cold hit her immediately. Packages of meat hung from hooks, wrapped in butcher paper. The temperature gauge read 20 degrees colder than standard. "Why so cold?" "Preservation," Elliot said smoothly. "I'm very particular about my meat." Renee nodded slowly. "I'm sure you are." As they walked back through the kitchen, She noticed something under his fingernails. Faint, reddish-brown. "I'll be in touch," she said. "Don't leave town." "I wouldn't dream of it," Elliot replied. "I just want my wife home safe." But as Renee left, she could feel his eyes on her back. Watching. Calculating. She made 2 calls from her car. One to the forensics team. One to the judge for a warrant. The warrant came through at 6 a.m. Renee led a team of 6 officers and 2 forensic specialists to Maison du Gout. They arrived before sunrise, when the restaurant was still dark and empty. Elliot opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair disheveled. "Detective," he said, his voice tight. "What's this about?" "We have a warrant to search the premises." She pushed past him. The kitchen looked different in the harsh fluorescent light. Less romantic. More clinical. They moved straight to the walk-in freezer. The lock took 3 minutes to cut through. When the door opened, cold air rushed out like a held breath. Inside, rows of meat hung from steel hooks. Each package wrapped precisely in butcher paper. Each one labeled with initials and dates. Renee pulled on gloves and carefully selected one package labeled MG. "Bag this," she said to the forensic tech. They took 12 packages total. Elliot stood in the doorway, watching silently. His face had gone pale. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "We'll see." At the lab, the forensic team worked through the night. DNA analysis took 72 hours. When the results came back, Renee sat in her office and read the report 3 times. Human tissue. Blood type B positive. Mitochondrial DNA match to Elena Morales. Marissa Granger's sister. Renee closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. She'd been right. They arrested Elliot during dinner service 3 days later. The restaurant was packed. Every table full. Diners mid-bite when the doors burst open and officers flooded in. Elliot stood at the pass, plating a dish. He didn't run. Didn't resist. He just smiled at Renee as she cuffed him. "Guess you finally found the secret ingredient," he said. Cameras flashed. Diners screamed. Someone fainted. By morning, the story had gone national. The Chicago killer chef. Cook County Courthouse looked like a fortress. Concrete and glass. Security checkpoints. Metal detectors. The trial of Elliot Granger began on a cold Monday in November. Elena sat in the front row of the gallery, clutching her sister's necklace. She'd worn it every day since Marissa disappeared. The small silver pendant felt heavier now. The prosecution team, led by Assistant State's Attorney Marcus Webb, was thorough and merciless. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Webb began, his voice steady. "This is not a complicated case. This is a case about a man who believed he was above humanity. A man who preyed on the vulnerable. A man who turned murder into a menu." The defense attorney, a slick corporate lawyer named Richard Voss, countered with insanity. "Elliot Granger is not evil," Voss argued. "He is sick. His culinary genius, and yes, we must acknowledge his undeniable talent, detached him from normal moral frameworks. He needs help, not prison." The gallery erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Outside, Daly Center Plaza swarmed with protesters. Some held signs reading justice for Marissa. Others held photos of the victims police had now connected to Elliot. 12 women. 12 names that hadn't been spoken in years. The media turned it into a circus. Every network sent reporters. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. Conspiracy theorists claimed Elliot had been running a cult. And then from Cook County Jail, Elliot made an announcement through his lawyer. He was writing a cookbook, The Art of Flesh. Public outrage exploded. Petitions circulated. Politicians condemned him. But Eliot didn't care. In his cell, he wrote page after page, his handwriting elegant and precise. Chapter 1. Understanding Your Ingredients. He was still performing. Still in control. Or so he thought. Chicago tried to forget. But forgetting wasn't possible. Health inspectors shut down Maison du Gout permanently. The restaurant sat empty, windows dark, a health hazard notice taped to the door. But the damage had already been done. Across the city, people who'd dined at Eliot's restaurant struggled to sleep. Mothers who'd served their families his sausages at birthday parties lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling. A woman in Logan Square broke down on camera during a local news interview. "I fed my children his food," she sobbed. "I told them it was the best in Chicago. And now..." She couldn't finish. The story became a wound in the city's conscience. Late at night, Detective Renee Carter sat in her apartment, staring at crime scene photos. She'd solved the case. Gotten justice. But victory felt hollow. She couldn't shake the smell. Rosemary and smoke. It clung to her clothes, her hair, her thoughts. Some nights, she dreamed of the freezer. Of opening those packages and finding faces staring back at her. She'd requested early retirement. Her captain tried to talk her out of it. "You're one of the best," he said. "I know," she replied. "But I'm done." Meanwhile, Elena began therapy. Twice a week, she sat in a small office in Evanston and tried to process what her sister's final hours must have been like. The therapist was kind, patient, but some wounds don't heal. One night, Elena dreamed that Marissa was calling her from inside a freezer. Her voice muffled, her breath visible in the cold. "Why didn't you come sooner?" Dream Marissa asked. Elena woke up screaming. In Cook County Jail, Eliot Granger became an outcast. Even among murderers and thieves, there were lines you didn't cross. Killing was one thing. But what Eliot had done, what he'd made people eat, was something else entirely. Inmates called him the butcher. They spat when he walked past. Guards had to move him to protective custody after someone tried to stab him in the lunch line. But Eliot didn't seem bothered. He spent his days writing in a leather-bound notebook. Page after page of recipes. Except these weren't real recipes. They were metaphors. Madness disguised as culinary philosophy. Salted sin. A dish for those who betray. Tears and blood, reduced to perfection. Mother's marrow, the essence of creation. Bone and regret, simmered until tender. Guilt au jus, the sauce that coats everything. Made from the slow drip of conscience. During a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation, the doctor asked him, "Do you feel remorse for what you've done?" Eliot looked up from his notebook. "Remorse," he repeated. "Do you feel remorse when you cook an egg? When you season meat? Those aren't people. Aren't they?" Eliot smiled. "Everything dies, doctor. I just gave death meaning. Purpose. Art." The doctor left the room shaken. In his notes, he wrote, "Subject demonstrates complete lack of empathy. No remorse. No recognition of humanity in his victims. Diagnosis: severe antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic and sadistic traits. Prognosis: nil." Back in his cell, Eliot continued writing. One entry read, "They don't understand. They never will. Creation demands sacrifice. Love demands consumption. To truly possess someone, you must make them part of you. Forever." He underlined "forever" 3 times. The prosecution's case was airtight. Over 3 weeks, they presented DNA evidence, crime scene photos, surveillance footage, and testimony from forensic experts. They played portions of the videos found on the flash drive, edited, but still horrifying. The defense tried everything. Argued insanity. Questioned the chain of evidence. Claimed the videos were fabricated. None of it worked. On the final day, Elliot took the stand. His lawyer advised against it. But Elliot insisted. He wore a suit. His hair was neatly combed. He looked almost normal. Marcus Webb approached him slowly. "Mr. Granger, did you kill your wife, Marissa Granger?" "I did." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. "And did you kill the 12 other women whose remains we found in your restaurant?" "I did." "Why?" Elliot leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "Because they were perfect. Each one. And perfection shouldn't go to waste." Wood paused. "You turned them into food." "I turned them into art." "You fed them to unsuspecting people." "I shared them with the world." "Isn't that what every artist wants? To be consumed?" The jury looked sick. Webb shook his head. No further questions. The defense called no witnesses. Closing arguments took half a day. The jury deliberated for 1 hour and 47 minutes. When they returned, the forewoman stood. "We find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder on all 13 counts." Elena wept. Renee exhaled for the first time in months. Elliot showed no emotion. As they led him away, he turned and looked directly at Elena. "She tasted like hope," he said. Guards dragged him out before she could respond. 6 months after the trial, Chicago tried to move on. But legends don't die easily. Maison du Gout remained empty, a ghost of itself. Real estate agents refused to list it. The building fell into disrepair. Windows shattered. Graffiti appeared on the walls. "Killer chef. Never forget." But whispers began to circulate in dark corners of the internet. Some claimed that Elliot's recipes, the real ones, had been leaked. That on certain forums, you could find the flesh menu. Step-by-step instructions for his most notorious dishes. Others said the recipes were coded, that they contained hidden messages, coordinates, names of accomplices. True crime YouTubers made pilgrimages to Logan Square, filming outside the abandoned restaurant. Some claimed to hear sounds from inside. Footsteps. The hum of a freezer that shouldn't be running. One video went viral. A group of urban explorers broke into Maison du Gout at midnight. Their flashlights cut through the darkness as they moved through the ruined dining room. When they reached the kitchen, one of them screamed. The camera swung wildly. In one frame, just one, there appeared to be a figure standing by the counter. A chef's hat. An apron splattered with something dark. Then nothing. The video ended abruptly. Comments exploded. "Did you see that? That was him. The killer chef. This is fake. Has to be." But fake or not, the video had 15 million views in 3 days. The legend grew. Parents told their children about the chef who cooked people. Teenagers dared each other to touch the restaurant's door at midnight. Chicago added the story to its catalog of urban nightmares. And somewhere, in a maximum security prison, Elliot Granger smiled. He'd wanted to be remembered. Mission accomplished. Detective Renee Carter retired on a gray morning in March. She turned in her badge, cleaned out her desk, and walked out of the precinct without looking back. Colleagues threw her a party. She didn't stay long. Some cases followed you home. This one followed her everywhere. 2 weeks later, she knocked on Elena's door in Wicker Park. Elena looked older, thinner. The grief had carved lines into her face. "Detective," she said quietly. "Come in." They sat in the small living room. Renee placed a manila envelope on the coffee table. "I wanted to return this to you," she said. "It was recovered from evidence. I thought you should have it." Elena opened the envelope. Inside was a leather-bound notebook. Elliot's journal from prison. "Why would I want this?" Elena whispered. "Because of the last page." Elena flipped through the pages. Recipe after recipe. Madness after madness. Then, on the final page, in Elliot's precise handwriting. "To the woman who tried to free me, I made you eternal. In every bite, every memory, every story they tell. Marissa, you are my masterpiece. And masterpieces never die." Elena's hands shook. "He doesn't get to define her," she said through tears. "He doesn't get the last word." Renee leaned forward. "Then you write it. Tell Marissa's real story. Who she was before him. What she loved. What she dreamed about. Don't let him be her ending." Elena looked up. "How?" "However you need to." 6 months later, Elena published a memoir. My Sister's Voice, Life Before the Killer Chef. It became a bestseller. In it, she told stories about Marissa's childhood. Her kindness. Her laughter. Her love of painting and old jazz records. The way she always ordered extra fries and shared them with strangers. She reclaimed her sister's narrative. And slowly, people stopped seeing Marissa as just another victim. They saw her as human. As the Chicago skyline glowed gold in the early morning light, Renee stood on her apartment balcony and watched the city wake up. Somewhere out there, other victims waited to be found. Other families waited for closure. Other stories needed to be told. She thought about starting a foundation. Something to help families of cold cases. But that felt like work for someone younger. Someone with more fight left. Instead, she called Elena. "I've been thinking," Renee said, "about what you said. About giving victims their voices back." "Yeah. What if we did it together? Not just Marissa's story. All of them. The 12 women Elliot killed. The ones nobody looked for." Elena was quiet for a moment. "I'd like that." And so they began. Each week they researched one victim. Found family members. Collected photographs. Pieced together lives that had been reduced to initials on butcher paper. Sarah Jenkins, 23. Dreamed of being a teacher. Nicole Torres, 31. Had a daughter she was trying to get custody of. Amber Washington, 19. Loved to sing. One by one they gave them back their names. Their stories. Their humanity. They called the project the Witness Wall. Because every story deserves to be witnessed. Every life deserves to be remembered. Not for how it ended, but for how it was lived. The screen fades to the Chicago skyline at dawn. The city stretches out beneath a sky painted in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere below, in those streets, life continues. People wake up, make coffee, kiss their children goodbye, go to work, come home. Most of them will never know how close darkness came to their dinner tables. How easily evil hid behind a smile and a white apron. But some stories demand to be told. Not to create fear, but to create awareness. To remind us that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look successful, charming, talented. Sometimes they look like someone you trust. Elliot Granger sits in a prison cell in Pontiac, Illinois. He'll never see the outside world again. Never hold a knife again. Never taste his own cooking again. But his story, his real story, isn't about him. It's about the 13 women whose lives he stole. It's about Elena's courage to speak when grief wanted her silent. It's about René's refusal to let another case go cold. It's about the people who witnessed the truth and refused to look away. In the end, Elliot wanted to be remembered as an artist, as a genius, as someone who transcended normal human boundaries. But history will remember him differently. Not as a chef, as a killer. And the women he murdered? They're remembered as daughters, sisters, mothers, friends, as people who mattered, as people who are missed. Marissa Granger was 34 when she died. She loved old books and Sunday mornings and the way rain sounded against windows. She wanted to open an art gallery someday. She made her sister laugh until they both cried. She believed in second chances even when she shouldn't have. She was more than what happened to her. She was more than him. And now, because of Elena and René and the witness wall, everyone knows it.
Thanks for tuning in to The Witness Wall. If you're new to this channel, kindly like and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.